Edgar Cayce. Meditation and the Mind. Contents. Mind is the active principle that governs man. The subconscious and superconscious minds. Mind is the builder. Thoughts are deeds. Thoughts are things. Visualization. Thought projection. Hypnotherapy and suggestion. Mental imbalance and possession. Memory and concentration. Sleep and the sixth sense. Dreams and visions. Meditation. Prayer. Attuning to the God within. Attuning through sounds and chants. Direction must come from within. Heaven and hell are states of consciousness. Conscience is the judge. Intuition. Automatic writing. Self-awareness and oneness with God. An entity's purpose for existence. Mind is the active principle that governs man. Question definition of the word mind. A. That which is the active force in an animate object, that is the spark or image of the maker. Mind is the factor that is in direct opposition of will. Mind being that control of, or being the spark of the maker, the will, the individual when we reach the plane of man. Mind being and is the factor governing the contention, or the interlaying space, if you please, between the physical to the soul, and the soul to the spirit forces within the individual or animate forces. We have the manifestation of this within the lowest order of animal creation. These are developed as the mind is developed, both by the action of all of the senses of the body, as we have them developed in man. Mind is that reasons the impressions from the senses, as they manifest before the individual. The active principle that governs man. Mind a factor, as the senses are of the mind, and as the soul and spirit are factors of the entity, one in all in one. We are speaking from the normal plane, of course. As the impressions are reached to the storehouse of the body, the mind is that factor, that principle, that portion that either surrogates, correlates or divides the impression to the portion needed to develop the entity or physical force toward the spark or infinite force, giving the life force to the body. The mind may be classified into the two forces, that between the physical and soul, and that between the soul and the spirit force. We see the manifestations of this, rather than the object of the mind itself. We find this always manifested through one of the senses, the same as we find the psychic force a manifestation of the soul and spirit, the mind a manifestation of the physical. With the division of the mind force as given, we see why in the physical plane individuals become misunderstood or misrepresented. They do not reach the same manifestations from other individuals. Hence the expression, they are all of one mind. To do good, they become of one mind, to do evil they are many. The nearer approach the mind comes to the divide between the soul and spirit forces, the nearer we become to that infinite force that guides when it is allowed to the individual's actions day by day. The subconscious and superconscious minds. Definition of the words conscious mind. The conscious means that is able to be manifested in the physical plane through one of the senses. Definition of the words subconscious mind. That lying between the soul and spirit forces within the entity, and is reached more thoroughly when the conscious mind is under subjugation of the soul forces of the individual or physical body. We may see manifestation in those of the so-called spiritual-minded people. The manifestation of the subconscious in their action. that portion of the body better known as the one that propagates or takes care of the body physical, mental, moral, or whatnot, when it is not able to take care of itself. Subconscious is unconscious force. This may be seen in every nerve end, in every muscular force. Subconscious action may be brought into manifestation by the continual doing of certain acts in the physical plane, so the body becomes unconscious of doing the acts. The subconscious mind is both consciousness and thought or spirit consciousness. Hence may be best classified, in the physical sense, as a habit. In the consciousness of earthy or material forces there enters all the attributes of the physical, fleshly body. In the subconscious there enters the attributes of soul forces and of the conscious forces. In the superconscious there enters the subconscious forces and spiritual discernment and development. Question: explain and illustrate the difference in the faculties of mind, subconscious and superconscious. A. The superconscious mind being that of the spiritual entity, and in action only when the subconscious is become the conscious mind. Subconscious being the superconscious of the physical entity, partaking then of the soul forces and of the material plane, as acted upon through and by mental mind. Hence the developing in the physical plane through environment being that as is given to the soul forces in subconscious mind to live upon. Illustrated, as has been given, in the light as came to Saul on the way to Damascus. The superconsciousness of Jesus came to the subconsciousness of Saul, yet he could not retain in conscious that necessary for him to do. The superconscious came to that of him directed to act in the conscious manner, or Saul, as he continued in the subconscious. Seeking for the light of that he could not make clear to his consciousness. Question: is the superconsciousness the mind or supreme controlling force of the universal forces? A. As pertaining to an individual, yes. As pertaining to universal forces, in the larger sense, no, but through the superconscious the universal forces are made active in subconsciousness. The superconsciousness is a portion of the great universal forces. Question: do animals have the faculty of mind known as subconscious? A. No. The mind of the animal is as pertaining to the conditions that would bring the continuation of species and of foods, and in that manner all in the animal kingdom, pertaining then, mind and spirit. Man reaching that development where the soul becomes the individual that may become the companion and one with the Creator. Question: explain the difference between experience as in an animal and experiences as in man, as related to mind. A. In the animal is that as appertains to the consciousness of the animal mind with spirit. As in man, that is of consciousness correlated with man's development, or the higher elements of mind and of matter. Hence man developed becomes lord and master over the animal kingdom. Man degraded becomes the companion, the equal with the beast or the beastly man. Then we would find this illustrated as in this: experience to man gives the understanding through the subconscious obtaining the remembrance. The animal only the animal forces, as would be found in this. Fire to man is ever dread, to an animal only by sense of smell does it know the difference. The experience does not lead it away. The time has arisen in the earth when men, everywhere, seek to know more of the mysteries of the mind, the soul's mind which man recognizes as existent, yet has seen little of the abilities of same. Question: explain. Mind is a factor as senses are of the mind, and as the soul and spirit are factors of the entity, one in all in one. A. as has been given, these conditions, mind of the soul, mind of the physical body, mind of the spiritual entity, are separated, that one may gain the knowledge of its action. As we have then in the mind of the spiritual entity, that mind wherein the entity, spiritual entity we are speaking of, manifests in the spiritual plane, the mind in the physical body is the subconscious, the conscious through which the entity manifests in the physical world, one in all in one. In one, in the spiritual mind, acted upon by their attributes, principally will, for it is the factor in the physical world, in the spiritual world, for the action being that through which the manifestations of any factor are known. As we would have in this, knowledge comes through the senses in the physical body to the conscious mind. The subconscious has the storing of the given condition, when the consciousness receives through the sense that knowledge, the will is the action against the incentives set forth. This is of the spiritual entity in its entirety. The superconscious is the divide, that oneness lying between the soul and the spirit force, within the spiritual entity. Not of earth forces at all, only awakened with the spiritual indwelling and acquired individually. In the spiritual that is known in the physical as the superconscious becomes the subconscious. When the body physical lays aside the material body, that in the physical called soul becomes the body of the entity, and that called the superconscious, the consciousness of the entity, as the subconscious is to the physical body. The subconscious becomes the mind or intellect of the body. The subconscious mind may only be fully understood when viewed from the spiritual viewpoint or aspect. The conscious mind rarely gains the entrance to truth in the subconscious, save in rest, sleep, or when such consciousnesses are subjugated through the act of the individual, as in the case of Edgar Cayce. Question: explain that barrier between conscious and subconscious mind. How may we eliminate it to allow the subconscious to direct? As would best be illustrated in this, we, individuals, find in the earth's plane those mental conditions wherein the conscious and subconscious would manifest by some given suggestion. The entity, through will, reasons with the condition. Hence the barrier as created. To overcome such conditions, bring about consciousness, the oneness of mind, soul, and body, that when such submerged conditions are enacted, we find the subconscious takes the direction in the physical plane. Then such an entity is given as spiritual-minded, subconscious-minded, subconscious-directed, spiritual-directed individuals. The more this becomes manifested, the more the entity may gain the impressions, the actual conditions of the subconscious forces, those ever directing, that give light and development to the soul's forces from the physical plane. In the words of the Master himself, "In my Father's house are many mansions," John, many consciousnesses, many stages of enfoldment, of unfoldment, of blessings, of sources. The ability to be conscious of a thing, mentally, is the only manner through which anyone experiences anything. Mind is an effect, or an active force that partakes of spiritual as well as material import. Mind is an essence or a flow between spirit and that which is made manifest materially. Mind as a stream, not mind as purely physical or as wholly spiritual, but is that which shapes, which forms, which controls, which directs, which builds, which acts upon. For that we find in the spirit taketh form in the mind. Mind becomes the builder, the physical body is the result. For ever in the flesh and in the spirit, mind is the builder. Know that the mental is the builder, in character, in nature, in characteristics, in spirituality, in morality, and all influences that direct. For it, the mind is both physical and spiritual. Mind is the builder, and, if there will be kept a balance, the physical mind and the spiritual mind should cooperate, coordinate. Thoughts are deeds. Thoughts are deeds, and are children of the relation reached between the mental and the soul, and has its relation to spirit and soul's plane of existence, as they do in the physical or earth plane. What one thinks continually, they become; what one cherishes in their heart and mind, they make a part of the pulsation of their heart, through their own blood cells, and build in their own physical. That which its spirit and soul must feed upon, and that with which it will be possessed. Thoughts become as deeds, or deeds are the father of thoughts. He that hateth his brother has committed as great a sin as he that slayeth a man. John. For the deed is as of an accomplishment in the mental being, which is the builder for every entity. That builded by thought and deed becomes the active particles, atoms, that make up that soul body. See? As a man thinker in his heart, so is he. Proverbs. Not what man says, nor what man even makes out like he does. For we are gradually builded to that image created within our own mental being. For, as has been given, the spirit is the life, the mind is the active force that, coordinated with the spirit that is of the creative energy, or of God, gives the physical result that is effective in every sense. Get that? If the mind dwells upon the spiritual things, then it follows that it becomes what it has dwelt upon, what it has lived upon, what it has made itself a portion of. But if the mind dwells upon self-indulgences, self-aggrandizement, self-exaltation, selfishness in any of its forms, in any of its variations, then it has set itself at variance to that first cause. And we have that entered in as from the beginning, that of making will, through the mind, at variance to creative forces before it has come into the movements of matter that we know as physical, material. That which the mind of a soul dwells upon, it becomes, for mind is the builder. And if the mind is in attune with the law of the force that brought the soul into being, it becomes spiritualized in the activity. If the mind is dwelling upon or directed in that desire towards the activities of the carnal influences, then it becomes destructive. Mind is indeed the builder. It will see that what is held in the act of mental vision becomes a reality in the material experience. Mind is the builder, and that which we think upon may become crimes or miracles. For thoughts are things, and as their currents run through the environs of an entity's experience, these become barriers or stepping stones, dependent upon the manner in which these are laid, as it were. For as the mental dwells upon these thoughts, so does it give strength, power to things that do not appear. And thus does indeed there become that, as is so oft given, that faith is evidence of things not seen. Well that the entity, or all, know that the law of love, or love as law, is cause and effect, or each impulse has its own corresponding reaction in thought, life, mental, physical, and material. Not understood by some, this, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Galatians. Each thought, as things, has its seed, and if planted, or when sown in one or another ground, brings its own fruit, for thoughts are things, and as their currents run must bring their own seed. For thoughts are things, just as the mind is as concrete as a post or tree or that which has been molded into things of any form. Each entity makes a record upon time and space, through the very activities of that stylus, the mind. The beginning of all great institutions, of all great things, is first in the mind of individuals who are in touch with infinite forces. The constant thought of hate, malice, jealousy. Result in warring conditions of nations and physical disturbances in a body. What we think and eat combined together make what we are. The visualizing of any desire as may be held by an individual will come to pass, with the individual acting in the manner as the desire is held. Question: is it more difficult to visualize things than to feel them? A. More difficult to visualize than feel, but they become one and a part of the same as felt than visualized. See? Here. In the activities of the mind of man, visualization is a portion of a material experience, no matter whether in the present experience or a combination and correlation of many experiences. While that felt is the sum total of all experiences, correlated with the superconscious or the life itself, provided the purport or the individual is in keeping with the purport of life or truth. See? Then we find when one, as the body here, my servant, visualizes this the sum of the experience. When felt, the sum of not only experience, but of the divine, hence, as has oft been said, those that would guide the body, mentally, physically, and spiritually, are above the normal or ordinary, or the regular, or the even higher forces in cosmic influence. Hence harder to visualize until felt. When felt, the visualization is a portion of the activity set out. Be oft in prayer, oft in meditation, seeing self gaining the proper nourishment, proper resuscitation forces from those elements being given to the system for its resuscitation. Well that there be kept that continued attitude of seeing the body replenished, rebuilded, in a mental, a spiritual, and a material way and manner. This held by the body consciousness as seeing these things accomplished, will aid also in the correcting in the physical forces. The body is able within itself to see those activities taking place. Will there be given or known that which is being desired to be accomplished in the body? See? Get that. That's the differentiation able to be seen and known by the body functioning and body activities itself. Question: to bring a desired thing or condition into manifestation. Is it advisable to visualize it by making a picture or just to hold to the idea in prayer and let God produce it in His own way without making a pattern? A. The pattern is given thee in the mount. The mount is within thine inner self. To visualize by picturizing is to become idol worshippers. Is this pleasing with thy conception of thy God that has given? Have no other gods before me, Exodus. The God in self, the God of the universe, then meets thee in thine inner self. Be patient and leave it with Him. He knoweth what thou hast need of before ye ask. Visualizing is telling Him how it must look when you have received it. Is that thy conception of an all-wise, all-merciful Creator? Question: how may I project a counterpart of my conscious awareness to any given place desired, and comprehend or even take part in events there? A. Read what we have just been given. This is an explanation of how. For it takes first spirit and mind form, and may be aware of the elements in space. For time and space are the elements of man's own concept of the infinite and are not realities as would be any bodily element in the earth, as a tree, a rose, a bird, an animal, as even a fellow being. Yet, just as a body may in its own material mind visualize, draw a concept of an incident that has happened in time, so may the body in spirit and in spiritual mind project itself. Be conscious of elements, be conscious of form, by and through spirit mind, as patterned in a conscious mind. Mind, then, becomes as a stream, with its upper and lower stratum, with that which moves swiftly or that which is resting upon either spirit or physical being. These come, then, as flashes to a conscious mind. They may be gradually sustained, just as mind may be projected. Here we will have an illustration. In a camp near here, near this particular spot, a place ye occupy, there has been a gift taken by someone else. There will be a projection of the thought, this must be returned, and it will be. For here we have the parties to this physical condition existent, right and wrong, good and bad, spirit, mind, body. They are parts of this happening, and it is now being returned. Thought projection. Question explain. All the elements that go to make up the expressions reach to the mental forces of an individual are actions of the psychic forces from another individual, and are the collaboration of truth as found in the individual or entity, expressing or manifesting itself, one with the other. In this we find that as giving how that each entity gains the impressions through the transmission of impressions, one toward another. And when the elements in the entity are such that the mental forces, speaking of physical, allow the suggestions from such entity, the collaboration, the mental impressions, depressions, the mental forces, give then that expression to the individual and find the lodgment in which the mental will build, as we would find illustrated in this. Though an entity in the earth plane may be adverse to conditions, a mental mind of another individual may so picture conditions of that directly opposed to the mental development of the other individual that those collaborations may become such as to be wavered, as to be given the truth or be given the untruth, for we are giving then of physical conditions alone, and not seeking the collaboration through the spiritual or the subconscious forces. And we find through such chasms, through such elements, comes the mental development, the soul development, the ability of each entity to take that necessary for that soul's development. And in this manner do we find collaboration of truths, collaboration of every thought coming to each and every entity, for thoughts are deeds, and carry that impression that acts through the individual entity. When the thought of many individuals is directed to one focusing point, the condition becomes accentuated by force, of thought manifested. As thoughts are directed, the transmission of thought waves gradually becomes the reality, just as light and heat waves in the material world are now used by man. Just so in the spiritual planes the elements of thought transmission or transference may become real. Be sure of this fact and assured of same. Thought transference occurs when both bodies or entities are in the subconscious condition, whether for a moment or whether for ages. For time in spiritual forces is not as it is in material forces. Question in the physical plane: do the thoughts of another person affect a person either mentally or physically? Depending upon the development of the individual to whom the thought may be directed. Individuals of this plane will and are developing this thought transference, as the senses were and are developed. The entity was in Atlantis during the higher state of civilization and was the teacher in the psychological thought and study, especially as that of the transmission of thought through ether. Question explain the statement, Etheronic energy is mental control. A thesis of pages may be written, my son, on this. But etheronic energy is the emanation from the spirit force through the active force of that which makes for matter being held in its positive position, or in its space of activity. Hence thought as a body, whether of an animal or plant, is shown as of plant receiving in its freshness of vigor influences that come from or through the Etheronic energy. Thoughts are things, and they have their effect upon individuals, especially those that become supersensitive to outside influences. These are just as physical as sticking a pin in the hand. Question: during meditation, I have experienced a strong vibration. Have I been able to direct this current to those we are trying to aid? As the vibrations are raised within self through this very visualization, the body, as everyone, is able to send or direct or create an environ to such a one to whom the thought is directed, that is helpful, hopeful, beneficial in every way. Fear, with a mental aberration, always creates activity in the minds of those feared. Disincarnate entities, that may be earthbound or that may be heavenbound, may influence the thought of an entity or a mind. When an entity, a body, fills its mind mentally, materially with carnal forces, the mental mind or physical mind becomes carnally directed. As individuals become abased or possessed, are their thoughts guided by those in the borderland? Certainly, if allowed to be. Question: please explain what took place while asleep. I visited and talked with an old neighbor. Later this neighbor told others that she had seen me. Should I attempt to develop this type of projection? This should be a result and not an attempt, unless ye know for what purpose ye are using same. Question: give the principle and technique of conscious telepathy. The consciousness of his abiding presence. 4. He is all power, all thought, the answer to every question. First, begin between selves. Set a definite time, and each at that moment put down what the other is doing. Do this for 20 days, and ye will find ye have the key to telepathy. No one can tell another exactly what he thinks, though certain vibrations may be felt. Hypnotherapy and Suggestion. Begin with the study of self, which may be best done by suggestive forces to the body through hypnosis. This sleeping sickness can only be removed through the suppression of the normal mind of this body by that of a stronger mind or an equal mind. In other words, put the body under what is commonly called hypnotic influence. Go through some 3 to 4 months of treatment. Question: who shall put this body under hypnotic treatment? One of the people that has a clean mind themselves. The body is good to look at, and it would not be well to put under the influence of one with ulterior motives or desires. It is also dangerous to submit to submerging of self through hypnosis, unless the body-mind of such an operator is in accord with constructive forces in a body. All bodies are amenable to suggestion through the abnormal mind, or through the subconscious mind, or through sympathetic nerve system. The mind acts upon the resuscitating forces of the physical being by and through suggestion. Just so there may be the realization that spiritual forces are a part of the whole physical being. For the real being is the spiritual import, intent, and purpose. See? Thus a meditation, a centralizing, a localizing of the mind upon those portions of the system affected. Question: what is the best method to be used in curing children of injurious habits already formed? In using that of suggestion to the subconscious or soul mind of the body as it loses itself in normal sleep, and praying with and for the body. In that state, when the body loses consciousness in sleep, the soul mind, not the unconscious but the subconscious proper, or superconscious, may be impressed by suggestion that will be retroactive in the waking or in the physical normal body. In these manners may the better results be obtained in a developing body, for it becomes then retentive and will retain same as the ideas and ideals of every element of the body's activities. For they become as the virtues of the body-mind. Always use constructive, never negative suggestions. Overcoming bedwetting may be accomplished best by making the suggestion. When the body is almost asleep, by the one who makes the application of the massage and rub. Positive suggestion, not that she won't do, but that she will do this or that, see? Suggest that when the desire is for the activity, the body will arouse and attend to same. As the daughter, who is afraid of water, turns to sleep, make the suggestion as for the usefulness of water in the experience. Biting fingernails is a natural expression of the body. But it should be overcome merely by suggestion and not by aggravating. Question Mr. Cayce, what do you mean by suggestion and who should do this? A. All force controlling any individual body. Is reached to all the forces of the physical, soul, or spiritual forces by suggestion, see? By suggestion we mean, say a thing is black, it is black, say a thing is white, it is white, say a thing is wet, it is wet, etc. Remove the headaches, through the suggestion as has been outlined here. The body will become normal when in its wakening state. The circulation will so be equalized as to remove all strain from any and every portion of the body, see? You say, you are not going to have any headache and you wake up? You don't mean anything. Question what causes the tingling in the sole of my foot all the time? A. Because of the connections along the nerve centers, and these will be parts of the suggestions made under the hypnosis. That there will be the perfect coordination through the centers of the body between sympathetic and cerebrospinal system. Question could hypnotism be used in his case? Deafmutism, epilepsy? A. It might be used, but be mindful of who would use same. Question would autosuggestion be helpful? A. Most beneficial. This can be given best by the mother. Question please give form of suggestion. A. As the body sinks into slumber, may the self, the ego, awaken to its possibilities, its responsibilities, that, as I speak to you, in the normal waking state you will respond in that same loving, careful manner this is given to you. See? The suggestions, dementia precox, that we would make when the body is sleeping, resting, is, there will be, in the whole of the physical and mental body, that response to that creative energy which is being carried into the system. Perfect coordination will come to the body. There will be reactions in every way and manner through the creative forces of divine love that is manifest in the hearts and minds of those about the body. This should be repeated 3 to 4 times until it has gradually reached the subconscious or the unconscious or the consciousness of the living forces that are impelling activity in a distorted condition. As to the balance in the mental forces. Question what can we do to stop crying? A. These depressions arise from the inability of coordinating the physical with the mental forces of the body, see? This may be accomplished more by suggestions than by other treatments. If it is deemed wise or necessary to overcome it, smoking, Then have the suggestions made to the body, as it is going to sleep by one who is in sympathy with the body's desire to change, that it will produce nausea, or that there will be the lack of desire for it. Use the radioactive appliance daily to put the body, retarded child, to sleep. Then as it is going to sleep, let the parents, the father, the mother, together, not separately, make suggestions to the body. If you desire a strong, robust, healthy body, then think health and bring it. Should you weaken within yourself and feel that the physical is below normal, then you become oppressed by it. The mere suggestion causes the condition to become active within the body. Question: in certain types of insanity, is there an etheric body involved? Mental imbalance and possession. A possession. Let's for the moment use examples that may show what has oft been expressed from here. There is the physical body, there is the mental body, there is the soul body. They are one, as the Trinity, yet these may find a manner of expression that is individual unto themselves. The body itself finds its own level in its own development. The mind, through anger, may make the body do that which is contrary to the better influences of same. It may make for a change in its environ, its surrounding, contrary to the laws of environment or hereditary forces that are a portion of the elan vitale of each manifested body, with the spirit or the soul of the individual. Then, through pressure upon some portion of the anatomical structure that would make for the disengaging of the natural flow of the mental body through the physical in its relationships to the soul. Influence, one may be dispossessed of the mind. Thus ye say rightly, he is out of his mind. Or, where there are certain types or characters of disease found in various portions of the body, there is the lack of the necessary vital for the resuscitating of the energies that carry on through brain structural forces of a given body. Thus disintegration is produced, and ye call it dementia praecox, by the very smoothing of the indentations necessary for the rotary influence or vital force of the spirit within same to find expression. Thus derangements come. Such, then, become possessed as of hearing voices. These are termed deranged when they may have more of a closeness to the universal than one who may be standing nearby and commenting. Yet they are awry when it comes to being normally balanced or healthy for their activity in a material world. Question: what causes him to lose control of himself? A possession. Question: does possession mean by other entities while under the influence of liquor? A. by others while under the influence of liquor, that causes those reactions and makes for the antagonism. There are those alcoholic cases that are of the sympathetic nature, or where there has been the possession by the very activity of same, but gold will destroy desire in any of them. There are those who are geniuses and yet are so very close to the border that an emotional shock may make a demon of a genius. There are those activities in which a spiritualized cell, by environment, may make of the demon a saint. The body is a supersensitive individual entity who has allowed itself through study, through opening the centers of the body, to become possessed with reflexes and activities outside of itself. Question: what is it exactly that assails me? A. outside influences, disincarnate entities. Question: please explain how to heal an epileptic, and are they possessed by an unclean spirit? If so, should we command it to leave in the name of Jesus Christ, and to no more enter? A. There are various characterizations in those that are termed epileptic. Some arise from one condition, some from another. Some are indeed possessed with an uncleanness from those of the moral life itself, and then become epileptics, meeting in self those very conditions that have been as omissions in its experiences in the earth. Bringing then that necessity that others in aiding demand in the name that these be cast out. 2. There are those that need the body vibrations each day, that these may be made whole by the laying on of hands, which will require some 2, 3 to 4 weeks, that will bring an understanding and a change in the body or bodies, that will make for wholeness of purpose. Question: how may epileptics possessed by an unclean spirit be designated or be known? A. As to whether there be consciousness or not through the falling or spell. Those that are unconscious are possessed or are possessed during that unconsciousness. See? Such need, then, the raising of daily vibration. This may be accomplished by placing the left hand over the abdominal region and the right hand over the dorsal or solar plexus ganglia, and so held for half to 3/4 of an hour each day. It will leave. Question: why should those entities return to this body after our prayers? A. They are as material as individuals. Why doesn't an entity return home? They are seeking a home. Dual personality is the personality, at times giving expression to being influenced by sojourns in the material plane, and at other times the individuality of the entity giving expression to the urges from the experiences during the interims between the earthly sojourns. There has already been departure of the soul, which only waits here. No physical help, dementia praecox, as we find, may be administered. Question: what caused this condition, insanity? A. Mental worry and, as given, poison accumulation in the system both from toxics and uremia. Neglect of self. Question: why is it difficult for me to remember? A. It isn't difficult, it's rather trained in self to forget. See, the differentiation between forgetting and remembering is, memory is the exercising of the inner self as related to thought. To acknowledge that the memory is poor is to say you don't think much. The forgetting is to say that the thought becomes self. Memory and concentration. Centered, for memory is thought, even as thought is memory, brought to the forefront by the association of ideas. Mostly when individuals forget it is because something within themselves, all their inner consciousness, has rebelled and they prepare to forget. We find in Mercury the high influences, as manifested in the abilities of the entity to remember as well as to forget. 4. The faculty of being able in manifestation to forget is as much of a virtue as the ability to remember. Remember, the soul never forgets, for it is eternal. Question: is memory thought or thought memory? A. With the evolving of the individual, the thought becomes a part of the memory. Physically, memory and thought are not synonymous, neither are they of the same beginning in physical forces. In that of the soul and spirit force, they become one and the same in evolution. Question: make clear what is meant by, in that of the spirit and soul forces, thought and memory are as the entity. A. A material entity may wonder whether thought is memory or memory thought, for we find that the indwelling of the subconscious forces in the spiritual entity entering the material planes, bringing gradually the thought of the development necessary for the entity's development towards the higher realm. Hence where will again enters into the condition of being the opposition of the soul and spirit forces. For we find, when thought would take the possession of the inmost soul or being of an entity, this is as of memory necessary for development of the entity. When such conditions are willfully banished for the lighter conditions, that would remove the necessary environment, the body is exercising thought and memory by will's forces. Not that any entity should enter into any condition that would so unbalance the mind conscious we are speaking of, as to bring upon itself condemnation, but rather that will make the balanced mind, for the bringing of condemnation from other minds becomes environment in the mind itself. Separate these, correlate these as truths given here, for this the basis of heredity and environment. Question: how can I attain a better memory? A. As ye apply, as ye ask, as ye manifest, as ye recall, more and more is recalled to thee. This is memory. For, know the basic principle comes in. Him as he has given, I will bring all things to thy memory from the foundation of the world. Isaiah. Do not think, then, that the mind of any active individual may ever be such as to be overburdened with memories, but make them ever a helpful influence. Do not study or ponder what may be termed hard or too long. Rather study, ponder same, and let the physical body immediately rest. Then the mental self has the opportunity to assimilate same. Question: how can the body improve memory and the power of concentration? A. By acting in that manner in which self is lost in that being done. This is the best manner to lose self-consciousness, and to become in the way of power in personality, and in being just one's self. Question: how can I improve memory and concentration? A. Study well that which has been given through these sources on meditation. Through meditation may the greater help be gained. Sleep and the sixth sense. Question: you will please outline clearly and comprehensively the material which should be presented to the general public in explaining just what occurs in the conscious, subconscious and spiritual forces of an entity while in the state known as sleep. A. First, we would say sleep is a shadow of that intermission in Earth's experience of that called death. For the physical consciousness becomes unaware of existent conditions, save as are determined by the attributes of the physical that partake of the attributes of the imaginative or the subconscious and unconscious forces of that same body. That is, in a normal sleep, from the physical standpoint we are reasoning now, the senses are on guard, as it were, so that the auditory forces are those that are the more sensitive. The auditory sense being of the attributes or senses that are more universal in aspect. When matter in its evolution has become aware of itself being capable of taking from that about itself in its present state. That is as of the lowest to the highest of animate objects or beings. During sleep, the organs that are of that portion known as the inactive or not necessary for conscious movement keep right on with their functioning as the pulsations, the heartbeat, the assimilating and excretory system keep right on functioning. Yet there are periods during such a rest when the heart, the circulation, may be said to be at rest. What, then, is that is not in action during such period? That known as the sense of perception as related to the physical brain. Hence it may be truly said, by the analogy of that given, that the auditory sense is subdivided, and there is the act of hearing by feeling, the act of hearing by the sense of smell, the act of hearing by all the senses that are independent of the brain centers themselves, but are rather of the lymph centers, or throughout the entire sympathetic system is such an accord as to be more aware, more acute, even though the body physical and brain physical is at repose or unaware. These, then, or this, then, the sixth sense, as it may be termed for consideration here, partakes of the accompanying entity that is ever on guard before the throne of the Creator itself, and is that may be trained or submerged, or left to its own initiative until it makes either war with the self in some manner of expression, which must show itself in a material world as in dis-ease, or disease, or temper, or that we call the blues or the grouches, or any form that may receive either in the waking state or in the sleep state, that has enabled the brain in its activity to become so changed or altered as to respond much in the manner as does a string tuned that vibrates to certain sounds in the manner in which it is strummed, or played upon. Then we find this sense that governs such is that as may be known as the other self of the entity or individual. Hence we find there must be some definite line that may be taken by that other self, and much that has been accorded or recorded, as to that which may produce certain given effects in the minds or bodies, not the minds, to be sure, for its active forces are upon that outside of that which the mind, as ordinarily known, or the brain centers themselves, functions. But, as may be seen by all such experimentation, these may be produced the same effect upon the same individual, but they do not produce the same effect upon a different individual in the same environment or under the same circumstance. Then, this should lead one to know, to understand, that there is a definite connection between that we have chosen to term the sixth sense, or acting through the auditory forces of the body physical, and the other self within self. In purely physical, the same body fed upon meats, and for a period then the same body fed upon only herbs and fruits, would not have the same character or activity of the other self in its relationship to that as would be experienced by the other self in its activity through that called the dream self. What relation has this sixth sense, as has been termed in this presented, with this soul body, this cosmic consciousness? What relation has it with the faculties and functionings of the normal physical mind, which must be trained, the sixth sense? Or must the body be trained in its other functionings to the dictates of the sixth sense? This sixth sense activity is the activating power or force of the other self. What other self? That which has been builded by the entity or body or soul through its experience as a whole in the material and cosmic world, see? Or is as a faculty of the soul body itself. Hence, as the illustration given, does the subconscious make aware to this active force when the body is at rest, or this sixth sense? Some action on the part of self or another that is in disagreement with that which has been builded by that other self, then this is the warring of conditions or emotions within an individual. Hence we may find that an individual may from sorrow sleep and wake with a feeling of elation. What has taken place? We possible may then understand what we are speaking of. There has been, and ever when the physical consciousness is at rest, the other self communes with the soul of the body, see? Or it goes out into that realm of experience in the relationships of all experiences of that entity that may have been throughout the eons of time, or in correlating with that as it, that entity, has accepted as its criterion or standard of judgments, or justice, within its sphere of activity. Hence through such an association in sleep there may have come that peace, that understanding, that is accorded by that which has been correlated through that passage of the selves of a body in sleep. Hence we find the more spiritual-minded individuals are the more easily pacified, at peace, harmony, in normal active state as well as in sleep. Why? They have set before themselves, now we are speaking of one individual, that is a criterion that may be wholly relied upon, for that from which an entity or soul sprang is its concept, its awareness of the divine or creative forces within their experience. Hence they that have named the name of the Son have put their trust in Him. He is their standard, their model, their hope, their activity. Hence we see how that the action through such sleep, or such quieting as to enter the silence. What do we mean by entering the silence? Entering the presence of that which is the criterion of the selves of an entity. On the other hand, oft we find one may retire with a feeling of elation or peace, and awaken with a feeling of depression, of aloofness, of being without hope, or of fear entering. and the body physical awakes with that depression that manifests itself as of low spirits, as is termed, or of coldness, gooseflesh over the body, in expressions of the forces. What has taken place? The physical self being unawares of those comparisons between the soul and its experiences of that period with the experiences of itself throughout the ages. And the experience may not have been remembered as a dream, but it lives on and on. Sleep, that period when the soul takes stock of that it has acted upon during one rest period to another. In sleep all things become possible, as one finds self flying through space, lifting or being chased or what not, by those very things that make for a comparison of that which has been builded by the very soul of the body itself. What, then, is the sixth sense? Not the soul, not the conscious mind, not the subconscious mind, not intuition alone, not any of those cosmic forces, but the very force or activity of the soul in its experience through whatever has been the experience of that soul itself. See? The same as we would say, is the mind of the body the body? No. Is the sixth sense, then, the soul? No. No more than the mind is the body. For the soul is the body of, or the spiritual essence of, an entity manifested in this material plane. Question: how may one train the sixth sense? A. This has just been given. That which is constantly associated in the mental visioning in the imaginative forces, that which is constantly associated with the senses of the body, that will it develop toward. Question: how may one be constantly guided by the accompanying entity on guard at the throne? It is there. It's as to whether they desire or not. It doesn't leave but is the active force? This sense is that ability of the entity to associate its physical, mental, or spiritual self to the realm that it, the entity, or the mind of the soul, seeks for its association during such periods. See? This might confuse some, for, as has been given, the subconscious and the abnormal, or the unconscious conscious, is the mind of the soul. That is, the sense that this is used, as being that subconscious or subliminal self that is on guard ever with the throne itself. For has it not been said, He has given His angels charge concerning thee, lest at any time thou dashest thy foot against a stone? Have you heeded? Then He is near. Have you disregarded? He has withdrawn to thine own self, see? That self that has been builded, that is as the companion, that must be presented, that is presented, is before the throne itself. Consciousness, physical, consciousness, see, man seeks this for his own diversion. In sleep it, the soul, seeks the real diversion, or the real activity of self. Question: what governs the experiences of the astral body while in the fourth dimensional plane during sleep? A. This is, as has been given, that upon which it has fed, that which it has builded, that which it seeks, that which the mental mind, the subconscious mind, the subliminal mind seeks. Then we come to an understanding of that. He that would find must seek, Luke. In the physical or material this we understand. That is a pattern of the subliminal or the spiritual self. Question: what connection is there between the physical or conscious mind and the spiritual body during sleep or during an astral experience? A. It's as has been given, that sensing. With what? That separate sense, or the ability of sleep, that makes for acuteness with those forces in the physical being that are manifest in everything animate. As the unfolding of the rose, the quickening in the womb, of the grain as it buds forth, the awakening in all nature of that which has been set by the divine forces, to make the awareness of its presence in matter. Question: why am I so dependent upon sleep, and what do I do during sleep? A. Sleep is a sense, and is that needed for the physical body to recuperate or to draw from the mental and spiritual powers or forces that are held as ideals of the body. What happens to a body in sleep? Dependent upon what it has thought, what it has set as its ideal. There are individuals who in their sleep gain strength, power, might because of their thoughts, their manner of living. There are others who find that when any harm, any illness, any dejection comes to them, it is following sleep. Sleep is the exercising of a faculty, a condition that is meant to be a part of the experience of each soul. It is as but the shadow of life, or lives, or experiences, as each day of an experience is a part of the whole that is being builded by an entity, a soul. And each night is but a period of putting away, storing up into the superconscious or the unconsciousness of the soul itself. Question: what is the best way for me to get to sleep? A. Labor sufficiently of a physical nature to tire the body, not mentally, but physically. Each and every soul leaves the body as it rests in sleep. Question: why does she walk and talk so much in her sleep? A. Close to the music that spans the distance between the finite and the infinite. Question: what are the best hours for sleep? A. When the body is physically tired, whether at noon or 12 o'clock at night. Question: how much sleep does this body need? A. 7.5 to 8 hours should be for most bodies. In dreams, those forces of the subconscious, when correlated into forms that relate to the various phases of the individual, give to that individual the better understanding of self. When correctly interpreted, forget not that it has been said correctly that the Creator, the gods and the God of the universe, speaks to man through this individual self. Man approaches the nearer condition to that field when the normal is at rest, in sleep or slumber. And when more of the forces are taken into consideration and are studied by the individual, not by someone else, it is the individual's job, each individual's condition, each individual's relation, each individual's manifestation, each individual's receiving the message from the higher forces themselves. Question: what is a dream? A. When those forces through which the spirit and soul have manifested themselves are reenacted by this same soul and spirit force in such a manner as to convey or bring back impressions to the conscious mind in the earth plane, it is termed a dream. This may well be caused by those forces that are taken into the system. The action of digestion that takes place under the guidance of subconscious forces becomes a part of that plane through which the spirit and soul of the entity pass at such time. Such manifestations are termed or called nightmares, or the abnormal manifestations on the physical plane of these forces. In the normal force of dreams, those forces are enacted that may be the foreshadows of a condition when the soul and spirit force compares the conditions in various spheres through which the soul and spirit of a given entity has passed in its evolution to its present sphere. In this age at present, there is not sufficient credence given dreams. For the best development of the human family is to give the greater increase in the knowledge of the subconscious soul or spirit world. This is a dream. Question: how should dreams be interpreted? A. Depending upon the physical condition of the entity, and that which produces or brings the dream to that body's forces. The better definition is this: correlate those truths that are enacted in each and every dream that becomes a part of the entity of the individual and use such for the purpose of better development. Ever remembering that develop means going toward the higher forces or the Creator. Those who are nearer the spiritual realm, their visions, dreams, and the like are more often retained by the individual, for as is seen as a first law, it is self-preservation. Then self rarely desires to condemn self, save when the selves are warring one with another, as are the elements within a body when eating of that which produces what is termed a nightmare. They are warring with the senses of the body, and partake either of those things that make afraid, or produce visions of the nature as partaking of the elements that are taken within the system, and active within same itself. For such experiences as dreams, visions, and the like are but the activities, in the unseen world of the real self of an entity. Question: what state or trend of development is indicated if an individual does not remember dreams? A. the negligence of its associations, both physical, mental, and spiritual, indicates a very negligible personage. Question: does one dream continually but simply fail to remember consciously? A. Continues an association or withdraws from that which is its right, or its ability to associate. There is no difference in the unseen world to that is visible, save in the unseen so much greater expanse or space may be covered. Does one always desire to associate itself with others? So individuals always seek companionship in this or that period of their experiences in each day. Do they withdraw themselves from? That desire lies or carries on. See, it's a natural experience. It's not an unnatural. Don't seek for unnatural or supernatural. It is the natural, it is nature, it is God's activity. His associations with man. His desire to make for man a way for an understanding. Question: is it possible for a conscious mind to dream while the astral or spirit body is absent? A. There may be dreams. This is a division here. A conscious mind, while the body is absent, is as one's ability to divide self and do two things at once, as is seen by the activities of the mental mind. The ability to read music and play is using different faculties of the same mind, different portions of the same consciousness. Then, for one faculty to function while another is functioning in a different direction is not only possible but probable, dependent upon the ability of the individual to concentrate, or to centralize in their various places those functionings that are manifest of the spiritual forces in the material plane. Beautiful, isn't it? There are those dreams that are of the purely physical nature, the reaction of properties taken in the system when digestion is not in keeping with assimilations. And then one experiences those conditions that may be called nightmares. Then there is the mental condition of the body wherein worry, trouble, or any unusual action of the mind, mentally, physically, causes seeking for the way and manner of understanding. This may bring either the action of the subconscious with the mental abilities of the body, or it may bring wholly correlations of material sensuous conditions. These may appear in the form of visions that are in a manner the key to the situations, or they may appear in conditions as warnings, taking on conditions that are as illustrations or experiences. Then there is the action of the purely subconscious forces, giving lessons to the body out of its own experiences. Dreams are the correlation of various phases of the mentality of the individual. See? There may be taken into the body physical that of elements that produces hallucinations, nightmares, or abortions to the mental forces of an individual. There may be conditions from the mental mind of an entity, by deep study or thought, wherein the experiences of the individual entity are correlated through the subconscious forces. The latent forces of the entity, the hidden forces of the entity, and correlating same in a vision or dream. Often these are as symbolic conditions, each representing a various phase to the mental development of the entity. Others there are, a correlation between mentalities or subconscious entities, wherein there has been attained, physically or mentally, a correlation of individual ideas or mental expressions that bring from one subconscious to another those of actual existent conditions, either direct or indirect, to be acted upon or that are ever present. See? Hence we find visions of the past, visions of the present, visions of the future. For to the subconscious there is no past or future, all present. This would be well to remember. Dreams and visions are of various classes and groups, and are the emanations from the conscious, subconscious, or superconscious, or the combination and correlation of each depending upon the individual and the personal development of the individual, and are to be used in the lives of such for the betterment of such an individual. In visions there is oft the interbetween giving expressions that make for an awakening between the mental consciousness, or that has been turned over and over in the physical consciousness and mind being weighed with that the self holds as its ideal. In visions where spiritual awakenings, these most often are seen in symbols or signs to the entity. For as the training of self's consciousness in a manner of interpreting the visions would be in expressions of eye, hand, mouth, posture, or the like, these are interpreted in thine own language. When these are, then, in symbols of such, know the awakening is at hand. Have ye not wondered why in the sacred writings it is said that God no longer spoke to man in visions or dreams? It is because man fed not his soul, his mind, upon things spiritual, thus closing the avenue or channel through which God might speak with the children of men. The conscious forces feed the subconscious, and for the better indwelling of the subconscious, good and only good thoughts should be projected into the subconscious. 4 developments come through such. 4 dreams are that of which the subconscious is made, for any condition ever becoming reality is first dreamed. A dream may be either in toto to that which is to happen, is happening, or may be only presented in some form that is emblematical. The entity should keep a record of its dreams, enabling the entity to warn others as well as self. Dreams should be made record of, else the physical in gaining its equilibrium often loses much that may be worthwhile. Interpret them, dreams, in thyself. Not by dream book, not by what others say, but dreams are presented in symbols, in signs. The body may analyze same dreams, interpret same better, for it can do it better for its own activity than were it done by the most wonderful of all interpreters. And so may it be given to all. In visions there is given the correlation of the mental mind with the subconscious forces of the entity, and as the conscious mind only reasons by comparisons, and the subconscious by inductive reasoning, then the correlation of these are presented in the manner that is often emblematical, often in a way of direct comparison. In dreams, visions, and experiences, each individual soul passes through or reviews or sees from a different attitude those experiences of its own activities. Through dreams, the entity may gain the more perfect understanding of the relationships between God and man and the way in which He, God, manifests Himself through mankind. As the consciousness of the entity becomes nearer to that one consciousness, that is, as the body conscious, the physical or sensuous consciousness, and the subconsciousness becomes nearer in one, or nearer in accord with each, the visions, the dreams, as are seen, are more profound in their presentation. Question: Dreamed I died. A. This is the manifestation of the birth of thought and mental development awakening in the individual, as mental forces and physical forces develop. This, then, is the awakening of the subconscious, as is manifested in death in physical forces, being the birth in the mental. Meditation. What is meditation? It is not musing, not daydreaming, but as ye find your bodies made up of the physical, mental, and spiritual, it is the attuning of the mental body and the physical body to its spiritual source. It is the attuning of thy physical and mental attributes, seeking to know the relationships to the Maker. That is true meditation. Ye must learn to meditate just as ye have learned to walk, to talk. There are physical contacts which the anatomist finds not, or those who would look for imaginations or the minds. Yet it is found that within the body there are channels, there are ducts, there are glands, there are activities that perform no one knows what. In a living, moving, thinking being. In many individuals such become dormant. Many have become atrophied. Why? Non-usage, non-activity. In thine own body there are the means for the approach, through the desire first to know Him. Putting that desire into activity by purging the body, the mind of those things that ye know or even conceive of as being hindrances, not what someone else says. It isn't what you want someone else to give. As Moses gave of old, it isn't who will descend from heaven to bring you a message, nor who would come from over the seas, but lo, ye find him within thine own heart, within thine own consciousness. If ye will meditate, open thy heart, thy mind. Let thy body and mind be channels that ye may do the things ye ask God to do for you. Thus ye come to know Him. Meditation, then, is prayer, but is prayer from within the inner self, and partakes not only of the physical inner man but the soul that is aroused by the spirit of man from within. Well, that we consider this from individual interpretation as well as from group interpretation, or individual meditation and group meditation. As has been given, there are definite conditions that arise from within the inner man when an individual enters into true or deep meditation. A physical condition happens, a physical activity takes place. Acting through what? Through that man has chosen to call the imaginative or the impulsive, and the sources of impulse are aroused by the shutting out of thought pertaining to activities or attributes of the carnal forces of man. That is true whether we are considering it from the group standpoint or individual. Then, changes naturally take place when there is the arousing of that stimuli within the individual that has within it the seat of the soul's dwelling, within the individual body of the entity or man. And then this partakes of the individuality rather than the personality. If there has been set the mark meaning here the image that is raised by the individual in its imaginative and impulse force, such that it takes the form of the ideal the individual is holding, as its standard to be raised to, within the individual as well as to all forces and powers that are magnified or to be magnified in the world from without, then the individual, or the image, bears the mark of the Lamb or the Christ or the Holy One or the Son, or any of the names we may have given to that which enables the individual to enter through it into the very presence of that which is the creative force from within itself. See? Some have so overshadowed themselves by abuses of the mental attributes of the body as to make scars, rather than the mark, so that only an imperfect image may be raised within themselves that may rise no higher than the arousing of the carnal desires within the individual body. We are speaking individually, of course. We haven't raised it to where it may be disseminated, for remember it rises from the glands known in the body as the Leiden, or to the Leiden, Leidig, and through the reproductive forces themselves, which are the very essence of life itself within an individual, see? For these functionings never reach that position or place that they do not continue to secrete that which makes for virility to an individual physical body. Now we are speaking of conditions from without and from within. The spirit and the soul is within its encasement, or its temple within the body of the individual, see? With the arousing then of this image, it rises along that which is known as the Appian Way, or the pineal center, to the base of the brain, that it may be disseminated to those centers that give activity to the whole of the mental and physical being. It rises then to the hidden eye in the center of the brain system, or is felt in the forefront of head, or in the place just above the real face or bridge of nose, see? Do not be confused by the terms that we are necessarily using to give the exact location of the activities of these conditions within the individuals, that we may make this clarified for individuals. When an individual then enters into deep meditation, it has been found throughout the ages, individuals have found, that self-preparation to them is necessary. To some it is necessary that the body be cleansed with pure water, that certain types of breathing are taken, that there may be an even balance in the whole of the respiratory system, that the circulation becomes normal in its flow through the body, that certain or definite odors produce those conditions, or are conducive to producing of conditions, that allay or stimulate the activity of portions of the system, that the more carnal or more material sources are laid aside, or the whole of the body is purified so that the purity of thought as it rises has less to work against in its dissemination of that it brings to the whole of the system, in its rising through the whole of these centers, stations, or places along the body. To be sure, these are conducive, as are also certain incantations, as a drone of certain sounds, as the tolling of certain tones, bells, cymbals, drums, or various kinds of skins. So, to all there may be given. Find that which is to yourself the more certain way to your consciousness of purifying body and minds. Before ye attempt to enter into the meditation as to raise the image of that through which ye are seeking to know the will or the activity of the creative forces. For ye are raising in meditation actual creation taking place within the inner self. When one has found that which to self cleanses the body, whether from the keeping away from certain foods or from certain associations, either man or woman, or from those thoughts and activities that would hinder that which is to be raised from finding its full measure of expression in the inner man, or inner individual, man or woman, meaning in this sense those radial senses from which, or centers from which all the physical organs, the mental organs, receive their stimuli for activity, we readily see how, then, in meditation, when one has so purified self, that healing of every kind and nature may be disseminated on the wings of thought. It is without the cleansing that entering into such finds any type or any form of disaster, or of pain, or of any disease of any nature. It is when the thoughts, then, or when the cleansings of group meditations are conflicting that such meditations call on the higher forces raised within self for manifestations and bring those conditions that either draw one closer to another or make for that which shatter much in the experiences of others. Hence short group meditations with a central thought around some individual idea, or either in words, incantations, or by following the speech of one's sincere inabilities, efforts or desires to raise a cooperative activity in the minds would be better. Then, as one formula, not the only one, to be sure, for an individual that would enter into meditation for self, for others. Cleanse the body with pure water. Sit or lie in an easy position, without binding garments about the body. Breathe in through the right nostril 3 times and exhale through the mouth. Breathe in 3 times through the left nostril and exhale through the right. Then either with the aid of low music or the incantating of that which carries self deeper to the seeing, feeling, experiencing of that image in the creative forces of love, enter into the Holy of Holies. As self feels or experiences the raising of this, see it disseminated through the inner eye, not the carnal eye, to that which will bring the greater understanding in meeting every condition in the experience of the body. Then listen to the music that is made as each center of thine body responds to that new creative force that is being, and that is disseminated through its own channel. And we will find that little by little this entering in will enable self to renew all that is necessary in him. First, cleanse the room, cleanse the body, cleanse the surroundings in thought, in act. Approach not the inner man or the inner self with a grudge or an unkind thought held against any man, or do so to thine own undoing sooner or later. Prayer and meditation. Prayer is the concerted effort of the physical consciousness to become attuned to the consciousness of the Creator, either collectively or individually. Meditation is emptying self of all that hinders the creative forces from rising along the natural channels of the physical man to be disseminated through those centers and sources that create the activities of the physical, the mental, the spiritual man. Properly done must make one stronger mentally, physically, for has it not been given he went in the strength of that meat received for many days? Was it not given by him who has shown us the way? I have had meat that ye know not of, John. As we give out, so does the whole of man, physically and mentally, become depleted, yet in entering into the silence in meditation, with a clean hand, a clean body, a clean mind, we may receive that strength and power that fits each individual, each soul, for a greater activity in this material world. Be not afraid, it is I, Mark. Be sure it is him we worship that we raise in our inner selves for the dissemination, for, as he gave, ye must eat of my body, ye must drink of my blood, 1 Corinthians. Raising then in the inner self that image of the Christ, love of the God consciousness, is making the body so cleansed as to be barred against all powers that would in any manner hinder. Be thou clean in him. Question: please explain the steps I should take in meditation. A. In whatever manner that to thine own consciousness is a cleansing of the body and of the mind. Whether washing of the body with water, purging same with oils, or surrounding same with music or incense. But do that thy consciousness directs thee. Then, meditating upon that which is the highest ideal within thyself, raise the vibrations from thy lower consciousness through the centers of thy body to the temple of thy mind, thy brain, the eye that is single in purpose, or to the glandular forces of the body as the single eye. Then listen. Circular vibrations experienced during meditation, spiritualized, are the emanations that may be sent out as thought waves, as a force in the activity of universal or cosmic influence, and thus have their effect upon those to whom by suggestive force they are directed. In meditation, when one is able to so raise within themselves such vibrations as to pass through the whole course of the attributes of physical attunements to the disseminating force or center, or the eye, then the body of the individual becomes a magnet that may, if properly used, bring healing to others with the laying of hands. Question: should one allow unconsciousness to follow? A. Unconsciousness is a physical natural consequence, unless there is the radiation passed off into some other force for raising same, or aiding same. Question: how can one direct the vibration culminating in the head to the one they would aid? A. By thought. Now we are speaking of a purely mechanical, metaphysical, spiritual activity that would take place. Question: why don't I have more success with meditation? A. Oft we find individual activity becomes so personal in even the meditations that there is sought that this or that, which may have been reported to have happened to another, must be the manner of happening to self. And in this manner there is cut away, there is built the barrier which prevents the real inner self from experiencing. In meditation, never open self, my friend, without surrounding self with the Spirit of the Christ, that ye may ever be guarded. The crystal ball is a means of concentration for those that allow themselves either to be possessed or to centralize their own spiritual activity through the raising of those activative forces in the physical body, known as the centers through which concentration and meditation is accentuated by the concentrated effort on anything that will crystallize same into activity. A means for some, rather, as has been given, let the proof come from that as may be visioned in the self. Question: what is my best time for meditation? A. As would be for all, 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning. Question: what is the best polarity for this body, as it meditates? A. Facing the east, to be sure. For this body, not for everybody, odors would have much to do with the ability of the entity to meditate. Let the mind become, as it were, attuned to such oriental incense, by the humming, producing those sounds of o-o-o-o-o. Not as to become monotonous, but feel the essence of the incense through the body forces in its motion of body. This will open the Kundalini forces of the body. For prayer is supplication for direction, for understanding. Meditation is listening to the divine within. For the prayer is as a supplication or a plea to thy superior, yet thy meditation is that thou art meeting on common ground. Attuning to the God within. He that would know the way must be oft in prayer, joyous prayer, knowing he giveth life to as many as seek in sincerity to be a channel of blessing to someone. Prayer is the concerted effort of the physical consciousness to become attuned to the consciousness of the Creator, either collectively or individually. All prayer is answered. Don't tell God how to answer it. Why worry when ye may pray? Know that the power of thyself is very limited. The power of creative force is unlimited. The prayers of 10 may save a city. The prayers of 25 may save a nation, as the prayers and activities of one may. But in union there is strength. The body, mental and spiritual, needs spiritual food, prayer, meditation, thinking upon spiritual things. Pray at 2 o'clock in the morning, facing east. For, as was given of old, say not as to who will descend from heaven, that ye may have a message, for lo, it is in thine own heart. For, thy body is indeed the temple of the living God. There he, as all knowledge, all undertakings, all wisdom, all understanding, may commune with thee. By attuning, turning thy thought, thy purpose, thy desire to be at an atonement with him. Let the strength of self not be wavered by advice of the many, but turn to the within, knowing that the power lieth there. For when ye enter into the Holy of Holies, in thine own self, there ye may find strength that is beyond compare of man's physical abilities. The time and times and half-times shall pass, and then shall man come to know that in the temple, in the tabernacle of his own temple, will he meet his God face to face. Each material manifestation is an undertaking by an entity in its attempts to become more attuned to a consciousness of God. Gifted meaning then innately developed by the use of those faculties of the mind to attune themselves to the infinite. In the use of the radioactive appliance. As the vibrations of the body are brought into coordination so that the mental, the physical and the spiritual attribute of the physical forces of the body are in attune or coordinate, the experiences of the mental forces are keen, active, positive. Thus periods come when any experience sought may find in itself its answer. Question: is it possible to meditate and obtain needed information? On any subject, whether you are going digging for fishing worms or playing a concerto. Vibrations of numbers, of metals, of stones, these are merely to become the necessary influence to make thee in attune, one with the creative forces. Just as the pitch of a song of praise is not the song nor the message therein. So, use them to attune self. How, ye ask? As ye apply, ye are given the next step. Attunements on any of the radios may be somewhere near the same point, but no two will ever be in exact same ratio. For their positions alter that, even when sitting side by side. In like manner, individuals attuning their soul consciousness to the divine within must attune according to their own development. We recognize the vibratory forces in electricity. They are weighed and measured. In radio, we have the magnifying of electrical vibration. It is the same in spirit or psychic or mind vibration. There is the magnifying by the action on those in attunement with that vibration. All force and power as is applied through psychic forces comes from a universal energy that is directed by individual application. As the entity studies, develops, and seeks, such application may be gained or attained by those forces through which attunement is gained. As is seen in all of the forms of vibration, whether in the mineral, in the vegetable, in the animal, in music, in those of chemics or chemicals, or those of spiritual vibrations. If the body is made animal by the excess of the gratification of animal desires, they become of the lower vibration. if that is made of an attunement with the bodies celestial, bodies terrestrial, or of whatever form, these develop through that same vibration, for that as is meted is measured again. To that vibration one attunes self, that response is back. See? In the deeper meditations, those influences may arise when the spirit of the creative force, the universality of soul, of mind, not in time and space but of time and space, may become lost in the whole. It has been given by him that is life, that the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, is within and thy body is the temple of the living God, a tabernacle, yea, for thy soul. And in the Holy of Holies within thine own consciousness, he may walk and talk with thee. How? Is it the bringing of sacrifice? Is it the burning of incense? Is it the making of thyself of no estate? Rather is it that ye purpose. For the purpose of thine inner self, to him is the righteousness. For he hath known all the vicissitudes of the earthly experience. And until ye show forth in his love that patience, ye cannot become aware of thy relationship with him. Question: what is the meaning of the white light I have seen? That awakening that is coming. More and more as the white light comes to thee, more and more will there be an awakening. For he is the light and the life eternal. As the Master, thy Lord, thy Christ has given, I stand at the door and knock, and if ye will open I will enter and abide with thee, I and the Father. Revelation: this as ye conceive, this as ye understand, is the highest source of understanding, of knowledge. As ye raise the consciousness to that within self, he meeteth thee in thine own tabernacle, in the Holy of Holies, in the third eye. When ye call on the Lord, he will hear, for he has promised to meet thee in thine own temple, in his Holy of Holies. Attuning through sounds and chants. Faith and hope and brotherly love and kindness, applied in one's daily life, may lead to an opening of the veil which enters into the Holy of Holiest, even as that veil which was rent when his spirit cried unto his God. Then make that God, his God, thy God. Seeking him first is the whole duty of an entity. Do not trust in forces other than those that are within self. Enter into the Holy of Holies within thine own consciousness, turn within, see what has prompted thee. And he has promised to meet thee there. And there shall it be told thee from within the steps thou shalt take day by day, step by step. Not that some great exploit, some great manner of change should come within thine body, thine mind, but line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. For it is, as he has given, not the knowledge alone but the practical application in thine daily experience with thy fellow man that counts. There is the sounding of what we call in the present the vowels in such a manner that they proclaimed, or aroused to the physical organism the associations of the centers through which there is the connection of the spiritual forces. In all of thy meditation, Om has ever been, is ever a portion of that which raises self to the highest influence and the highest vibrations throughout its whole being that may be experienced. As ye begin with the incantation of the ERRR, the EE, the OLO, the MMM, raise these in thyself, and ye become close in the presence of thy Maker, as is shown in thyself. They that do such for selfish motives do so to their own undoing. The entity will find that there are the combinations of that ye call the scale, or those harmonies set to the that awaken within self the abilities of drawing that love of the Father as shown to the children of men. It is well with this entity that in the sounding of the name, in the writing of same, it always all be included. The vibration, the harmonious effect of same becomes almost as a shield in the entity's experience, as well as in the numerological effects and their vibration upon those the entity may approach. Sound within self. These as they rise along the center from the bodily forces to unite the activities, the entity may bring greater harmony within the experience. In that period, he was called Ziyu. In the next in the next Egypt with Areta, he was called God Gilrardi. Question: what is the note of the musical scale to which I vibrate? As we have indicated, this is not R, but see? These are the sounds, those that respond to the centers of the body, in opening the centers so that the Kundalini forces arise. As to the note of thy body, is there always the response to just one? Yes. As we have indicated oft, for this entity as well as others, there are certain notes to which there is a response, but is it always the same? No more than thy moods or thy tendencies, unless ye have arisen to the understanding of perfect attunement. Follow that known in thine own present as Iouom. For the raising of that from within of the creative forces, as it arises along that which is set within the inner man as that cord of life that once severed may separate, does separate, that balance between the mind, the body, the soul. The answer to every problem, the answer to know his way, is ever within, the answering within to that real desire, that real purpose which motivates activity in the individual. These appear at times to become contradictory, of course, but no attunement, atonement and at-one-ment are one. Just as the inner self is that portion of the infinite, while the self-will or personality is ever at war with the infinite within, for lack of what may be called stamina, faith, patience or what not. Yet each entity, each soul, knows within when it is in an at-one-ment. Question: what will help me most in coming to right decisions as to my life? Prayer and meditation, to be sure. For, as he has given, behold I stand at the door and knock. If ye will open I will enter in, Revelation. Then, in thine own mind, decide as to whether this or that direction is right. Then pray on it and leave it alone. Then suddenly ye will have the answer, yes or no. Then, with that yes or no, take it again to him in prayer, show me the way. And yes or no will again direct thee from deep within. That is practical direction. Question: when confronted with difficult situations, how can I be sure the decision I reach is from the light and not my own thinking? Ask the question in self in the physical mind so that it may be answered yes or no, and in meditation get the answer. Then closing self to physical consciousness through the meditation, ask the same question. If these agree, go ahead. If these disagree, analyze thy own self and see the problem that lies in the way. Direction must come from within. Hence seek in self the more, and that which is answered first in self on any subject, where material or mental aid is sought, answer the problem in the consciousness of self. Then seek a verification in the period of meditation, and this aid will be the greater. Question: discuss plan and operation to cover next 2 years to guide me. We wouldn't cover 2 days. These will have to be worked out by self and not from here. For remember, what you do today reflects in what may happen tomorrow, and to be sure bears fruit in its regular season. That choices are made by counsel here or counsel there only makes for confusion with self, off. Rather meet within thine own self thy Maker, and let the guide come there as to what ye shall do. Question: will it be the proper time to go now? Such decisions are to be directed by that within self that answers to the influences or forces from without, but the answers and directions must come from within, rather than by any helping hand. Rememberest thou all that has been given as to the manner in which the individual finds self? Did Moses receive direction save by the period in the mount? Did Samuel receive rather than by meditating within his own closet? Did David not find more in the meditating within the valley and the cave? Did not the Master in the mount and in the garden receive the answers of those directing forces? Question: please analyze my relationship with blank, and give me directions for its continuance if it should continue. A. Know that until the answer is within thine own conscience as pertaining to thy relationships mental, physical, or spiritual, to any soul or entity, until the answer is thine, it can only be confusion. Who may answer but thyself, thy Lord, thy ideal? Whatever may be the problem, take it to him. These are questions not to be answered through mortal, nor disincarnate spirits, but thyself and with him. Listen to that voice, that answer that comes within, and ye will know and realize that this can only be answered in thine own conscience. Heaven and hell are states of consciousness. Heaven is that place, that awareness where the soul, with all its attributes, its mind, its body, becomes aware of being in the presence of the creative forces, or one with same. That is heaven. You grow to heaven, you don't go to heaven. Conscience is the judge. The will must be made one with the Father, that we may enter into that realm of the blessed, for, as has been given, only the true, the perfect, may see God, and we must be one with him. The kingdom of the Father or the kingdom of heaven is within. Why? Because our mind, the Son, is within us. It is within that there is the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of God is without. All ye may know of heaven or hell is within your own self. Thy mind that is both spiritual and material, that partakes of heaven, yea, and of hell also. To live in life with a conscience that is continually dogging thee, continually warning against thine own better self in the desire to do good, is to indeed live in a hellfire itself. For as given of old, there is each day set before us life and death, good and evil. We choose because of our natures. If our will were broken, if we were commanded to do this or that, or to become as an automaton, our individuality then would be lost, and we would only be as in him without. Conscience, consciousness of being one with him, with the abilities to choose for self. The judge shall be thine own conscience, for conscience is that which awakens the mind of the soul. The soul that of thine self, that is the nearest portion of the dwelling place of the Holy of Holies himself, the Spirit of the Master. Each soul is accountable unto its own conscience. The time cometh when ye must stand before the judgment bar of thine own conscience, as must each soul. Ye cannot go against thine own conscience and be at peace with thyself, thy home, thy neighbor, thy God. These doubts, these fears that come in thine experience are but thine own conscience, or the mind of thy subconscious self, smiting thee. How are ye to know when ye are on the straight and narrow way? My spirit beareth witness with thy spirit, Romans. How? Thy God consciousness, thy soul, either condemns, rejects, or falters before conditions that exist in the experience of the mental and material self. Act as thy conscience and thy heart dictate. Intuition. Question: give detailed directions for developing the intuitive sense. A. Trust more and more upon that which may be from within. Or, this is a very common, but very definite, manner to develop. On any question that arises, ask the mental self, get the answer, yes or no. Rest on that. Do not act immediately, if you would develop the intuitive influences. Then, in meditation or prayer, when looking within self, ask, is this yes or no? The answer is intuitive development. Intuitive forces are developed more by the introspective activities of a conscious mind. Hence the ability of those of any cult or any group of people who by constant introspection through entering into the silence are able to bring to the surface the activities of the entity as a whole. Hence they are called sages, lamas, or such. These, when they are made to be what is commonly termed practical, yet remaining spiritual in aspect, that is, sticking to the truth, they become masters. Know the basis of introspection, which is, in that termed Christian religion, prayer, while that termed in many occult as introspection, meditation, or mysticism, or occult influences brought in. They are one and the same in their essence, but know they are all of one source. The more and more each is impelled by that which is intuitive, or the relying upon the soul force within, the greater, the farther, the deeper, the broader, the more constructive may be the result. Anyone with great imagination, of course, is intuitive. How received woman her awareness? Through the sleep of the man. Hence intuition is an attribute of that made aware through the suppression of those forces from that from which it sprang, yet endowed with all of those abilities and forces of its maker. The entity is one very intuitive, easily separating self from itself, which so few may do, or, as it were, the ability to stand aside and watch self pass by. Automatic writing. Question: please tell me how I may develop automatic handwriting? A. By practice. Sit alone with pencil and paper, and let that guide that may be sought, or may come in, direct. It will come. Anyone may do this, but is it the better way? It may oft be questioned. Question: what is the source of the automatic writing I have received? Should I develop this? Please explain. A. Those influences that are about thee are good, but rather ever let that which thou would gain through thy writing be inspired by the best in self as magnified through the Christ, than any entity or spirit or soul. While these seek for expression ever, they be seekers as thyself. Be thou led rather by that which comes from thine own soul, which thou meetest in the temple of the body, thy God in thee. And if he uses other influences, he will direct same. Question: should I develop automatic handwritings? A. We would not advise it. Too easily it is misleading, especially when there are so many flashes about. Rather use the intuitive force. The records each entity makes are written or impressed upon time and space, and through patience one may attain to the awareness or consciousness of same in one's own experience. Thus may the relationships of the entity and the universal consciousness, or God, become more and more a conscious reality. Not that it may be even describable in word. For words are merely a means of communicating ideas to one individual from another, while universal consciousness with creative forces is rather the awareness that bespeaks of life itself. For, as the Spirit of the Christ is one, and the individual entity in its manifestations of thought, purpose and desire makes its awareness one with that consciousness, so may that soul awareness come. Self-awareness and oneness with God. For as one uses that one knows, the awareness of its source, of its ability, of its end, is more and more a part of the entity, of the soul. Then the next step that should be for the self is given through that of meeting oft with thy God-self from within. For the growth, as he gave, the knowledge of God and his righteousness is a growth from within. So the awareness of the kingdom, of being at one, of having the Christ consciousness as thy companion, as at oneness with thee, is being, not by faith or by works alone, but by being. By doing, that which is as the promptings of the desire of the heart, that has met and does meet in the secret chambers of the mind, of thy heart. What is necessary will be given thee, of thy past, of thy present, of thy future. Are they not one in him? He is from the foundations of the world. He is, and as he has given, come and know ye me, and I will give thee that knowledge that thou hadst with me since the foundations of the world. Isaiah. When the purposes of an entity or soul are the more and more in accord with that for which the entity has entered, then the soul entity may take hold upon that which may bring to its remembrance that it was, where, when, and how. Thinkest thou that the grain of corn has forgotten what manner of expression it has given? Only man forgets, and it is only in his mercy that such was brought about. For what was the first cause? Knowledge, knowledge. What then is that cut off in the beginnings of the sons of God becoming entangled with the daughters of men, and the daughters of God becoming entangled with the sons of men? As in Adam they forgot what manner of men they were. Only when he lives, he manifests that life that is the expression of the divine, may man begin to know who, where, what, and when he was. As ye use that as is known, there is given the more and more light to know from whence ye came and whither ye go. The gift of God to man is an individual soul that may be one with him, and that may know itself to be one with him and yet individual in itself, with the attributes of the whole, yet not the whole. For he, man, has been made just a little lower than the angels, with all the abilities to become one with him. Not the whole, nor yet lost in the individuality of the whole, but becoming more and more personal in all of its consciousness of the application of the individuality of creative forces. Thus more and more at one with him, yet conscious of being himself. In keeping with the precepts of Jesus, I and the Father are one, John, not individually, but in the personal applications of the tenets, commandments, being one in purpose, one in application. Remember, it has been given that the purpose of the heart is to know yourself to be yourself and yet one with God even as Jesus, even as is represented in God the Father, Christ the Son, and the Holy Spirit, each knowing themselves to be themselves yet one. What, then, is the first cause of man's expression? That he may know himself to be himself and yet one with the Father. Separate, yet as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are one, so the body, the mind, the soul of an entity may also be at one with the first cause. No urge exceeds the will of the individual entity, that gift from an of the creative forces that separates man, even the Son of Man, from the rest of creation. Thus it is made to be ever as one with the Father, knowing itself to be itself, and yet one with the Father, never losing its identity. For to lose its identity is death indeed, separation from the creative force. The soul may never be lost, for it returns to the one force, but knows not itself to be itself any more. All moves and has its being in him, acts. So it is in self. Life itself is the consciousness, the awareness of that oneness of that universal consciousness in the earth. Seek to know, to experience its souls, relationships to its creator, its mate, its part of itself. For the creative forces are more even than companionship, for the heritage of each soul is to know itself to be itself, yet one with the creative force. The first law of knowing self, of understanding self, is to become more and more sincere with that thou doest in the relationships one to another. For the proof of same is the fruit thereof. And when thou hast found the way, thou showest the way to thy brother. There is no short cut to a consciousness of the God force. It is part of your own consciousness, but it cannot be realized by the simple desire to do so. Too often there is a tendency to want it and expect it without applying spiritual truth through the medium of mental processes. This is the only way to reach the gate. There are no shortcuts in metaphysics, no matter what is said by those who see visions, interpret numbers, or read the stars. These may find urges, but they do not rule the will. Life is learned within self. You don't profess it, you learn it. The coming into the earth has been and is, for the evolution or the evolving of the soul unto its awareness. Know thyself and thy relationships to creative forces. For the relationship of man and woman to God should be no different from the relationship to the fellow man. The greater the awareness of that relationship to the creative forces, the more easily is the will made one with the purposes of the creative forces. Attunement is making self's will one with the creative forces. Without the gift of free will to the soul, how could it become aware of the presence of the all-abiding creative force? Know that the Lord thy God is one Lord. That is of soul, of mind, and of body. Then when the soul, the image of the Creator, is attuned to the divine, you are on the road to meeting thy own self. The real being is the spiritual import, intent, and purpose. The understanding of the relationships with that creative force which is as the longing for the soul. In the fruits of that, as is given oft, as the fruits of the Spirit, does man become aware of the infinite penetrating or interpenetrating the activities of all forces of matter, or that which is a manifestation of the realm of the infinite into the finite, and the finite becomes conscious of same. In all thy getting, my son, get understanding, Proverbs. That of self. When one understands self, and self's relation to its maker, the duty to its neighbor, its own duty to self, it will not be false to man or to its maker. In patience we become aware of our souls, of our identity, of our being each a corpuscle, as it were, in the great body, in the heart of our God. And He has not willed otherwise. The purposes for which an entity enters a material experience. As indicated, the entity comes from without, or from an unknown quantity, into, first, that of desire, association, and conceptive activity with mental and physical growth, developing into a channel through which the spiritual import manifests. Then its purpose is that such an entity as this may make manifest the spiritual influence in a material world. Each soul was in its first division from the Godhead to be a companion with that force, that influence, that purpose. Hence the purpose is to grow in grace, knowledge, understanding, for the indwelling in that presence. Hence all that manifests in the material world is a shadow of that which is of mental or spiritual import. And as to whether or not each division in mind, matter, becomes sufficient to be indwelling, or an attunement with the creative force, is dependent upon the application of the purposes and desires of such force in materiality. There is the physical body, there is the mental body, there is the spiritual body. They are one. They each have their attribute. They each have their weaknesses. They each have their associations. Yet they must be all coordinated. The spirit is the life. Then each phase of the experience of the entity must be of the spiritual import in its very nature, if it is to live, to be the fulfilling of its purpose, to bring peace and harmony, for which purpose it is in existence. It must be constructive in the very nature and the very desires, without thought of self being the one glorified in or by same. Rather the glory is to the influence of force that prompts same. The whole of the experience of an individual entity in a material plane is the coordinating and cooperation of creative forces from without to the divine within, as to keeping in activity that may bring into manifestations health and happiness. What then, ye may ask, are the purposes for a soul manifesting in flesh in any individual entity? In the beginning, all souls that were as portions of the thought of God were given the opportunity for expression, as to be companions for the creative force, or God. The purposes for each soul's experience in materiality are that the book of remembrance may be opened, that the soul may know its relationship to its Maker. Each soul, and ye especially, has a definite job to do. But ye alone may find and do that job. What, then, is the purpose of the entity's activity in the consciousness of mind, matter, spirit in the present? That it, the entity, may know itself to be itself and part of the whole, not the whole but one with the whole. And thus retaining its individuality, knowing itself to be itself, yet one with the purposes of the first cause that called it, the entity, into being, into the awareness, into the consciousness of itself. That is the purpose, that is the cause of being. The purposes for which each soul enters materiality are that it may become aware of its relationship to the creative forces or God. By the material manifestation of the things thought, said, done, in relation to its fellow man. Little by little does one come to the understanding of the purpose for which they came into the earth. Purpose is of the makings of the individual, plus that given in the beginning, and as souls seek the Father, in that companionship that one may have through communion with Him. And communion with Him means doing, not shutting self away from thine brother, from thine neighbor, even from thine self, rather applying self to duties material, mental and spiritual, as is known. Opportunity is a material manifestation of a spiritual ideal. Through a physical body, the soul has an opportunity to express the attainments developed in other spheres of consciousness. Life in the earth becomes an opportunity for paralleling, correlating, cooperating, bringing into existence the effects of using all experience presented for the development of the soul. Hence, opportunity, primarily, is material manifestation of spiritual actions in conscious forces of the material plane. Each sojourn or indwelling may be compared to that as ye have in your mental experience as a lesson, as a schooling for the purposes for which each soul entity enters in earth experience. And why an entity under such environments came into that experience. Each study of each lesson then adds some phase of development for the soul. The entering of every soul is that it, the soul, may become more aware or conscious of the divine within. That the soul body may be purged, that it may be a fit companion for the glory of the creative forces. The purposes, the import of the earthly sojourn, is to meet self, to overcome those weaknesses in self, and become more and more adaptable to the spiritual truths that are a part of each and every entity. Remember, ye are as corpuscles in the body of God, each with a duty, a function to perform if the world would be better for thou having lived in it, and this is thy purpose in the earth.